Welcome, everyone, to the Green Team Legendarium podcast. With me today, I have friendly Kyptan,
Heyo.
and to my right, I have Black Diamond, real name, I forgot already, but you can say Black Diamond.
I'm Sean. Hello, everyone.
And I'm Yettibeats. And today we're going to be talking about the Legendarium's favorite series, their favorite author, Robin Hobb, unofficial favorite author, and specifically the book Ship of Magic, book one in the Liveship Traders Trilogy. For me personally, this is one of my favorite trilogies of all time. The main Legendarium podcast did not continue with Hobb after Farseer, but first I want to throw it to my panelists on just their thoughts on Hobb going into this trilogy and what the relationship to her is. And I'll start with Sean. Throw it to you, buddy.
Sure. Um, so I read Farseer a couple years ago. I liked it a lot. I'm a big fan of Hobbs. She's one of my favorite authors, and that started with Farseer. Um, Despite me liking Liveship more, that my love of Hobbs started with Farseer, and I just love how she does characters and character relationships mainly. Um, so many characters in Farseer are ones that I just think really pop off the page, and the relationships are so deep and intricate. And I love her prose, I love her world building. Um, of course, that first trilogy isn't perfect, but I think she really fills a specific niche in fantasy that is very much her own. And yeah, big fan.
You're preaching to the choir. What about you, Kip?
uh, I did the Farseer trilogy just around the same time the podcast did, which was back in about December of 2017. And it has taken me this long to recover. um, I definitely experienced a mild form of burnout, and if I hadn't gone straight to the Dresden files immediately after it, I probably would have burned out more.
hmm
Oh yeah.
Hobb had a way of reaching into your emotions that is kind of dangerous because she decides to make very sad stories with that power.
That is a fact. I'm all about that
Oh, me
though.
too. That's a selling point for me. Sad stories.
Yeah, Sally Sparrows over here.
With the BoJack picture, so
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, for me, she just taking it book by book in that series. I feel like after Assassin's Apprentice, or even like I'll say halfway through Assassin's Apprentice, I was like, yeah, this is fine. I was like, I think it's kind of hard to get into. I think you really need to connect with Fitz to enjoy that series. But I think once he kind of goes on that mission, the second half of Assassin Apprentice, I'd say I really connected with that and kind of the twist that ending took in kind of the what was he in, like a hot tub, that hot tub scene, if you remember at the end with the dog.
Yeah.
I mean, from that point on,
How
I think I was like, all right, this is the author for me, and kind of what you guys said. I've said this before, but like obviously her character work is great, but I feel like what really sets her apart is her relationships in her series. Specifically in that first trilogy, the relationships that are all bouncing off of Fitz. I love Fitz. I think a lot of people are hit or miss with him. I think if they find him either annoying or the choices he makes frustrating, but for someone who immediately just connected with a kind of an abandoned bastard, I was all in on him. And either if it was his relationship with Verity, if it was with Bert, Molly, every different kind of nook and cranny he has with each of those characters, I found honestly riveting, and as Kip alluded to, just ultimately depressing in many ways, and heartbreaking. But again, I think those are the best stories where you kind of come out of them with a kind of like a good cry, where you're crying, but you're kind of sometimes
Sure.
feeling good, bittersweet cries. So for me, after that, I would read anything from her. And going into Liveship, I thought it was interesting. I was nervous. I don't know about you guys going into this, but I was nervous about it because I think a lot of people think this is not her. strongest trilogy, or maybe more people love the Fitz books, either the first trilogy, the one after this one, or the
I definitely got a lot of recommendations telling me to skip this
yeah,
series.
me too. And
Really?
I was like, man,
I thought
I don't know if you felt that way too, Black, but I was like, all right, I'm definitely not going to skip it because I want to read everything. But after reading this, I was kind of baffled that people actually want you to skip just on quality of writing alone. I was surprised people want you to skip live ship.
I've seen a lot of people say this is like the best trilogy or the best sub-series in Realm of the Elderlings.
Oh, good.
Maybe I'm just looking in different circles, but I've seen mostly a lot of praise for Live Ship.
Oh, good. Yeah, it gives best.
I've seen
Yeah, it's
both,
true.
which scares me sometimes.
Um, but the thing I loved about this and I was interested in is that there's just straight from the Ship of Magic. There, you're just thrown into like 7 different POVs and characters' just lives and decisions they make where you're like, oh boy, or that life makes upon them and see how they react. And I'm like, I almost didn't know how to handle it, but it was so much different than it's just the first person point of view with Fitz, and I was impressed with how well she kind of adapted to that as a writer. And I thought this kind of is, maybe you guys disagree, but maybe Live Ship would be a better entryway into Hobb than the first trilogy. Maybe I think it is, but I'm obviously could be wrong with
I haven't finished it, so I
that.
don't know.
Touche.
I think it's a fine entry point. Um, I probably wouldn't recommend it, uh, just because there are some allusions. Because this does take place after the events of the entire Farseer trilogy, and there are some allusions to events in the Farseer trilogy that are pretty major. I mean, you wouldn't really, if you hadn't read Farseer, you wouldn't realize that, but then maybe if you then move to Farseer, you'd be like, oh, I think I remember what's about to happen here, um, which, would negatively impact your reading of that first trilogy. So I wouldn't recommend it, but if someone was really dead set on it, I wouldn't dissuade them too much.
Yeah, I hate reading stuff out of order, but
Me
well,
too. Publication all the
yeah,
way.
the only
Publication.
reason I said that is a lot of people. I think with Fitz, I think he's such a divisive character where people either really connect with him or don't. And with Live Ship, you're just shown how diverse, I guess, Hobbs
I
can
mean,
be.
I think Live Ship has a bunch of divisive characters.
Well, instead of
It's true.
instead of just one, there's like 9. There's now. They only get more divisive from here. I guess we should
Great.
specify. So me and Sean have read all of Live Ship. This is our second time reading through it. This is Kip's first read through. So this is the first time he's read Ship of Magic. He's read maybe a little bit of Mad Ship so far. Uh,
I've read maybe a third or a quarter, somewhere around there, of Mad
right,
Ships.
until we halted him in his tracks to record this podcast.
Yeah, you guys stopped me.
Yeah.
Um,
And I didn't reread it, by the way,
oh, that's right. You did
technically.
read, yeah. So you read it once, and
Yeah.
that's right. And this is my second time through. Okay, but we know what happens throughout the full trilogy.
Yes.
Kip
Yeah,
get
yeah.
us done at book 1. Yeah, sure. Okay. First, first thing I wanted to talk about is it was kind of a. We'll just start easy with a Reddit question. This is from you ToughDB. I wonder what that means. Anyway, so our favorite and least favorite Vestra characters. This will be a good chance to talk about some of the characters. Obviously, they wanted to specify this is excluding Kyle. I think we all. He will be coming up later. Do not worry. I cannot wait. But excluding him, and it's up to you guys. Do you want to go into spoilers right away in this episode? Do you want to hold off on spoilers?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm also in that camp. So if you are listening and you haven't read Ship of Magic, turn this off, read it, and come back because we're going to go into deep spoilers in this episode. So, Kip, for
I love how the first general spoiler-free impression is just read this book. It's great.
yeah, turn around now and just read it. How dare you? Yeah. So, yeah, Kip, what favorite and least favorite? The Vestrit crew.
Okay, so there was a question brought up before we recorded this episode about whether Wintro counts as a Vestrit or not. And for the purposes of this question, I'm assuming he does not. I'll let someone else argue that position. So I'm going to say that Althea is my favorite, even though she is deeply self-involved at times. She's still trying to like uphold the ideal of a ship and a crew, and that is at least mostly she hasn't done anything irreparably bad so far, whereas every other character has.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Even Brashen,
Yeah. I was just thinking that before that. I was like, has Brad? I feel like
although he's not a Vestrit, but
Not a Vestrit.
because I feel like he comes away the cleanest out of this first book somehow.
Oh, he does for sure.
yeah.
And my least favorite Vestrit right now, again, Kyle, not allowed, is probably Kefria.
Good pick.
She's boring. She doesn't want responsibility. She's screwed up a whole bunch of ways, and she's being manipulated by her husband. And even after having realizations of such, continues to try and act like there's no problem.
It's beyond infuriating.
It's
You're exactly right. But I don't know how to start with Kefria. If I was I'd just say if I was Althea,
I mean,
I would.
she's in an abusive relationship, so I can't blame her too much, but like she didn't start out great before that point either.
Good point. And yeah, Sean, you go because I'll bounce off that in a second. But your favorite and least favorite?
Uh, I mean, I I have to say Wintro, even though I guess technically he's not. Um, I think he should count for this question because of I think the measure stick for this question can be Vivacia and how she has the ties to the Vestrit family, and he obviously is at the, by the end of the book the deepest connection to Vivacia, um, and he's half Vestrit. I'm kind of forgetting, just half, right?
Yeah, by blood,
Yeah.
Kefra's side. Yeah.
I mean, direct line
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
happens to be you can't be 100% Vestrit or unless you're
True.
severely inbred.
Right, right. But yeah, I have to go Wintro. Um, I love his journey from priest to less of one. Um, I enjoy characters getting their worldview kind of shattered and they're kind of readjusting to that. Um, I like his thought process on a lot of things. I think because of that thought process, he was pretty refreshing as a character in fantasy because he was kind of a pacifist and he was very logical, um, which was a stark contrast to a lot of those around him, especially when he's kind of on board a ship with all these burly men. Um, so I enjoy that aspect of his character. I also enjoyed he had some of the more hype moments in the book for me. Um, when he declares himself a Vestrit.
Absolutely.
So it's right from his mouth. He's a Vestrit. So that and then also the scene with his finger, another great moment. And one of the things I like most about Ship of Magic in general is how uh, the character of the Vivacia was fleshed out because obviously she's a ship um, and a person. That's you could debate otherwise, but she's essentially a person, but she's also a ship. And I just thought it was super unique for Hobb to make a ship be a character, and we get most of the Vivacia's character development through her relationship with Wintro. So that kind of boosted the enjoyment of him in my eyes as well. And I'll probably gush on about Wintro later in the episode, but least favorite, um,
I mean,
other than
Wintrow's my favorite character.
you just
He's
don't
my
consider
favorite
him a
character.
Vestrit.
I don't believe he's a Vestrit, and I will
Okay,
argue this if necessary.
okay. Least favorite, I mean, I guess you wouldn't consider Malta a Vestrit too then?
I
No.
would consider it
It's the same blood
I
as
know.
Wintro though. She just
I'm
more of a Kyle Like,
Being invested is more than
That's
blood.
right.
all right, well,
It's more than ability.
Although I agree with Wintro, just disagree with Malta. I have no reasoning for it.
yeah, you can't do that. All right, so if Kyle and Malta are off the table, then I guess Kefria, but I didn't exactly hate her in this book. I just thought she wasn't as developed in this one as the others. Mm, yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. I don't feel like explaining that.
Yeah, I get it. I kind of agree with both of you on the dislike. I'm gonna go with Ronica. I feel like every problem.
It's bold.
I feel like every problem in this first book, or not every, but the main problem comes back to her with having Kyle take over the Vivacia and kind of
It
talking and
does.
talking her late husband into giving it to him and doubling down uh, doubling down on that just because of her idea of societal norms that Althea has to become a woman. She has to be a woman like, she was sick of her own prejudice of her acting like a boy on the ship all these years. And this was a way that, just give it to Kyle. These are how these things are done. Or actually technically she gave it to Kefria. And Kefria, as you said, is weak willed in this book and kind of cave because she doesn't want that responsibility. She just wants a life of not family business and tending to her house and her garden and things like that, and let Kyle do all that stuff. And just Ronica being, because Ronica's also described in the book, and there's times where she's kind of a matriarch figure where she puts her foot down and like in the book, Hobb kind of describes her like, oh, here we go. Ronica says something that goes, and she just did it for the every wrong thing. It just went the wrong way every single time. She was so blinded by how things should be done in Dingtown and things like that. Uh,
And that's something that I object to because as a character, she should have known Kyle better.
yeah,
She should like if we're to believe that she's this master trader who has managed all of her husband's financial dealings over the years, and she has managed the family and she has been this matriarch, how could she not know who Kyle is?
She does, but I think this is a perfect segue into our next overall topic, which is the decision to give the Vivacia to Kyle. And Yeti, you think that was a poor decision, right?
yeah. I just, as Kip said, they know who Kyle is, and there was multiple times where there were red flags, and one of which being where he said, we're going to make money this way by selling slaves. Like at a certain point, he says, a way to get out of debt because the Vestra family's not doing well, they're going to be picking up slaves. And Ronica right there should be like, that's not happening. That's no Bingtown trader does that. It's obscene, or just on morally, it's despicable. And she knows, I assume, some stuff about live ships, how fragile they are when they first become live. And I was just
Or
baffled
quickened?
throughout the book where she kept making so much mistakes, as Kip said. And she's the leader of this family and a well-known Bingtown trader.
To be fair to Ronica, by the time that Kyle announces that he's going to be selling trade slaves on the live ship, they she has no more role.
Yeah,
She
that's
has no
also
more
true.
legal
Well,
right.
true, but the one who does, and you said this, is Kefria. They were kind of a tag team of just
Yep.
terrible.
Yep. And at that point, like Ronica made one bad decision. Kefria continues to make bad decisions.
Right.
But so I think the decision to give the Vivacia to Kyle was actually the correct decision because like Althea is young, inexperienced. She just kind of like chilled on Ephron's ship. She didn't really have much of a role. Uh, and imagine being Kefria and your younger sister is 3 years younger than you, and you're like, okay, here, take control of the family's um, main means at livelihood. I think that where Kefria and Ronica misstepped was not granting Kyle the charts for the Rainwild rivers or whatever to trade up those rivers because that's what live ships are made for. So if they didn't want him to use the Vaisha for slavery, for slave transportation, then why didn't they concede the Rainwild charts?
Okay. Oh, I got to jump in here, Sean. Are you are you
Go
Yeah.
are
for
you
it.
Team Kyle right now? I'm almost baffled right now with what's going on here.
I am team. Every character in this book makes bad decisions that are
So
understandable,
I will say this:
including Kyle.
you are you. I will agree with a certain point, which I love about this book. uh, if you just there's so much hatred towards Kyle in this book, rightfully so. But I do like at points there he makes points about Althea. Not there are a few he just misses terribly and is misogynistic and awful, but there are some
Oh yeah.
points
Mhm.
that are absolutely correct. As you say, she is not ready for a live ship.
Exactly.
I will say, I think her dad's original plan was to give Brashen the live ship and she would be first mate. I'm pretty sure that was his,
Yeah.
which I think would be much
Because
much
like
better plan than giving it to Kyle.
Kefria's not captaining the live
Right.
ship. Like
Right,
Correct.
and but to Sean's point, she totally expects to be that captain. She expected it. It was one of her biggest flaws, I think, as a
sure.
character, where she has this sense of entitlement, and you kind of. And I feel like in other fantasy books, she would be the hero and be like, yes, she needs like as she's trying to get that live ship back, and as a reader, you're like, yeah, you got to fight to captain that live ship. And like I remember reading it halfway through or three quarters, I'm like, you can't have her in charge of this live ship. And to be fair, she realized that by the end of the book, which is a cool arc. But I mean,
Mhm.
I have to push back. Kyle should never be around that live ship. That guy has no feel for live ships.
Never.
Brashen has been with. I keep forgetting their dad's name. The leader of Estrid, who passed away.
Efron.
Efron, yeah.
Efron.
He's been with Efron. He knows the do's and don'ts with live ships. He could kind of tutor Althea until she's ready. However, kind of what Kyle's doing with Wintro. And the maps thing to the Rain Wild. Sure, I maybe give him Brashen, but I don't think Kyle's. Every decision he made, he just is awful with people management and just leadership qualities. He just uses force, physicality. I just think I don't know. I don't know if he conned them before the book, where it's like he seemed like a nice guy, kind of like what Kefri was saying when she was
Must have.
looking back on how Kyle used to be, when it'd be more romantic and this and
Oh
that.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know,
He love bombed
yeah,
Kefria.
definitely. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is smooth sailor here. But all we know from him, I was like, there's no quality that I would ever want that guy leading a journey on the high seas, stuck on a ship with that guy.
I think Althea should have been allowed on the ship to gain experience. Um, I don't remember if that was even offered to her. I don't believe it was, but I think she would have turned it down because she would have had to work under Kyle. So I think Hobb just decided to not deal with that.
It would have happened before her last piece of punishment.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think we got to see
Right.
the inciting incident where she was talking smack about Kyle, and he took offense to it. It was reported to him, and
Yeah, yeah.
that was his last straw.
Right. And can we just delve into a Kyle conversation now? So, I,
Sure.
when I reading this book, I have never met. I don't want to give too much away in the later books in the series. But I have never met more hateable, hateable person ever in a fantasy book. And there's just something about uh, power and getting thrust into power when you do not deserve it, you're not qualified for it, and ultimately you look to abuse it. And he checks off all three of those. And it's the best part about him as an antagonist is that's all too real. That happens in the real world all the time, and it's just shown in this book over and over again. I mean, he's a physical abuser. He kicked the Yahoo out of Wintro multiple
Oh
times,
yeah.
horrifyingly, to be quite honest with you. He's
Yep.
incredibly sexist. His the stuff he says to Althea about just getting walked home to Brashen, and I do want to dive into that whole topic about being kind of slut shamed. Um, he does that to Althea all the time, about thinking that she's sleeping around the town just because Brashen brought her home, which I think says more about him and his insecurities. Yeah, I just the way he yeah,
Projection.
projection, totally. I could not get enough. I put as a question for you guys on here. You're the most impactful character reading this, and I was going to pick him. He impacted me so negatively. I couldn't get over it. But as Sean said, and I said it earlier, with little grains of truth about like stuff with Althea and even Wintrow, but he's just so despicable. I don't even care that they're true. So you're wrong 99% of the time.
I Kyle is up there in horrible people, but he has not cracked my like top five.
Yeah, I got to read more, I guess.
Um, but like mostly because although he does a lot of horrible things, including verbally and physically assaulting his children and spouse, he has not killed or raped any of them yet. So he's starting
I was gonna say that.
at an advantage.
Yeah, pretty tame compared to how some fantasy can get.
Yeah. What about you, Sean?
But
Fan favorite?
fan favorite you said?
No, sorry, yeah.
Oh no. What I was gonna say is I think part of that is just how well, is because of how much of a patriarchal society Bingtown is, and he just kind of plays off that, and like he is all that power because the society that they live in grants him that power, and it's not really questioned. And the effects of um, toxic masculinity kind of trickle down to almost all of our characters. I think it was an interesting theme that was explored.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, the new patriarchy.
Right.
Mhm.
But it's also like it just says a lot about a person because not every person would react like he does in those situations. And again,
Yes.
he just felt so. I mean, kudos to the character. I say he's hateable, but I think he's a great character to hate. I mean, even the ways he deals with, I guess, management on the ship, where he always, for some reason, he thought that Ephraim was too too easy on Althea, where he's like, no, what you really have to do is have a hard hand with her, really put her in her place.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Oh my
why do you?
God, that was
Yeah,
chilling.
and it's he does the same thing with Wintrow. And it's like,
Yeah, it's gross.
yeah, gross. It's exactly what it was, and there's no basis for it other than his personal disgust peeking through. I guess I would say. So I don't know. I think that's when you read this first book, he kind of comes away as the just ultimately awful. Like I think he puts Regal to shame,
Yeah.
and Regal is pretty bad.
Oh,
One of
easily.
the worst things about Kyle is that he does these horrible things, and he often does them out of a mistaken understanding of what the effects of them will be,
Exactly.
but he believes that this will be the outcome, and then so often he's no one questions him and rewards him for it. Like it's well documented that he is a less successful trader than Efron was,
Mhm.
and that his voyage on the Vivacia took longer and was much less profitable than it should have been
Yep.
at the start of the book, which almost led to Efron not dying on the deck of the ship.
Yeah. Exactly. Just from his strong-headedness, and you said it perfectly.
And no one said anything.
Well,
He was new.
Brashen stuck up a little bit, I think, right? He was the only one who would push back a little bit on
Yep.
Kyle and Althea.
Brashen and Ronica and Althea, they said some things, but they didn't say them in public because they
Right.
couldn't.
Exactly. Each one had a reason why they could not do that. So, yeah, I mean, I think going forward, if you know what happens at the end of this book, his role gets diminished a little bit. But I could, he stuck out to me so much the first time reading it and the second time, where I was like, man, I was getting my blood boiled. I know what happens in this book with him, and I was still getting my blood boiled again, just hoping something would change where Ronica would be like, no, putting my foot down, Kefra, you're in control of the ship. You give it to Brashen or whatever, and it obviously didn't happen. I knew that, but
No.
I didn't care. All right, let's pivot a little bit. So we'll get into this now. You Spiegel Legal Supergeel name on Reddit said, "Did you think too much time was spent on the sea serpents? You know, they said they know they're important, especially for the world building, but they were the least interesting chapters to me. I think I could have done slightly less with them. I agree. I did find them. It wasn't so much least interesting as I have no idea what the heck was going on, and I was so interested in the other characters that you had these little breaks with these kind of bumbling serpents. I'm like, what is going on with these guys? Again,
Bumbling is the right word
Yeah,
because I feel like there wasn't really a direction.
certainly not in this first book.
Like we knew that eventually at some point they were going to come up in connection with the Vivacia, but because everything in Hobb comes together, everything in most fantasy books comes together. But on the way, what did they do?
They were confused. They acted
They
confused.
were very confused. They did a little bit of exposition, and that was it.
exactly. I will say again, as you said, Kip, it obviously comes together by the end, and you're like, oh yeah, I can see it all now. But as you're reading it, especially the first time, I will say I wouldn't. I don't think I'd spend less time with them because it wasn't. They didn't take up a crazy amount of the book. They had it was kind of short little bits, and it
No,
was kind of
yeah,
the perfect amount where I
yep.
didn't get too turned off from it. But I will admit to not knowing at all what was going on with them, and I even till the very end, I'm slower than most guessing how things connect, but it took me quite a while, and it's definitely a big world building thing. But
I think maybe they could have gotten introduced a little bit later. Let us get our feet under us first, and then start giving us those new viewpoints because they didn't have work to do the entire book.
Yeah, the
Like,
first chapter, right? The prologue.
yeah.
yeah, that's a tough sell. Just starting that book, where especially where I'm like, this is the best trilogy ever. It's way better than the first one. And you're talking about Malkin, and he's like kind of the one who remembers. Like, what?
I'm not Yeah, I'm not personally someone who gets upset by things like that, but I know that there are people who are.
Yeah, my take is that the chapters were few and far in between enough to where I wasn't bothered. I think if there was like two more chapters, I would have been like, okay, cut it down a bit. But I thought it was a a seldom amount, and it was fine.
I would have cut one at least.
Yeah, that sounds
Yep.
fine too.
Um, so I like this question. This is the last question from Reddit, but I actually kind of like this one. It's a little long, but I'll run through it real quick. They said part of the reason Live Ship Traders is a hard trilogy for me to get through is I feel Ship of Magic tends to drag immensely. They said the audiobook is 30 plus hours, and 25 hours of it is setting up the plot of the story and delving into every character's feelings and the turmoil that is going on in the Vestra family. And this is the part I like. I know that setting the scene is important, but the amount of drama in every character's life in this series was just too much and unappealing to me. And I felt exactly the opposite of that last sentence. That was exactly the appealing part for me.
Me too.
Was the amount of kind of drama and throughout every character. Did it drag? I didn't think so. I really didn't. I think it's like every hot book, maybe a little slow in the beginning. Uh, you know,
And that's the thing. Like, this is a Hobb book, and so I know there's going to be character drama, and I know it's going to be excessive at times.
Hmm.
Uh, and not excessive, but extravagant. I think might be a better word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, is your life so unchained that like you're dealing with all this drama? Seems rough. And all these characters just going through it.
but that's a good point. Like it's kind of a mindset thing with Hob. Like when I read her books, I go in knowing this is kind of what I'm in for and what I want, and I know that her books, you're not going to be thrust. Not that it drags, but I know they're going to be kind of plotted, maybe oddly or kind of,
Hmm.
it's just like I said, I've sipped them like a fine wine. I don't little by
She
little.
asks you to marinate in them
That's right.
for sure,
She
Yeah, and
does.
which I
yeah,
enjoy
I'm happy to.
most of the time.
But again, the characters' drama in this series, I think, is the selling point. I couldn't get enough of just slamming my head against the wall after each and every new 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 motive. Um, but I guess that could be a problem if you don't like that. 9 people having tough lives, it might not be the series for you.
It's so much better than Modicet in that regard.
So the series. I keep it's there's so many good characters, so I feel like we keep bringing up the characters, but we haven't talked about them yet. Give me Kip. Let's start with you. Give me your thoughts on Paragon because I know he is definitely a fan favorite.
I thought you were gonna say Kenneth.
Oh well, I
I also thought you were going to say Kennet or Sorkor.
I guess we'll have to
Um,
get to them too. Yeah.
but Paragon, I like Paragon. I haven't seen enough of him
Does
yet.
he leave you wanting more? Like, are you intrigued by the mystery of Paragon, the backstory, and
I am intrigued by the mystery of Paragon. I'm also a little scared of Paragon, especially because of his like backstory about how a child died on his decks and made him who he is.
Hmm.
he's definitely a bit off kiltered, and he makes you
Yeah.
very uneasy. And kind of what Sean said, or Kip, just them. These live ships are practically children. Paragon. He's
Some of them more than
right,
others.
especially
Yeah.
Ophelia's not.
The
that's
the
right,
two that we have the most experience with are both
right.
children.
One of which Vivacia should be because she just became awakened.
Yep.
What you call it? Quickened.
Quickened.
Thank you. She was just quickened, so that makes sense. With Paragon, he has been alive for much longer, and he's just been abused over and over again. Which I probably should talk about that as a huge theme in this book. Um, but over and over again, where he's still stuck in that childlike mindset. It can dip in and out. He'll have these moments where he seems like an adult and a joking kind of adult, but there are
Yeah.
times when he'll get very whiny or boo me and like a child would, and it just, I mean, that's goes on and off throughout the series, which I really found interesting and just kind of intriguing with him.
Since you brought up quickening,
Yeah,
I'd love to talk about like the actual mechanics of what makes a live ship and how it becomes alive.
Let's do it.
Three generations of the same family have to die on the decks of the live ship, which is that it sounds like a dark ritual. And
Hmm.
though the Vestrit family presents it in this really reverent, loving, like it's a very religious experience with them, almost. Although it runs counter to Wintrow's actual religious training.
Hmm.
It's this little Bingtown trader thing where they die on the decks of their live ships and become it. And then to see it go so wrong with Paragon,
Hmm. That's a
to
good
to
point.
have this emotionally labile, schizophrenic, split between its own three selves, that's it's really disturbing.
Now I'm wondering
yeah.
if, like, how do they know that they couldn't just like slaughter three family members just like right then and there and like quicken it?
I was just thinking
I mean, Paragon is the how they know that,
That's
but
probably true. That's probably the answer.
that.
Yeah.
That's a good point. They could. Who knows? Why don't people just murder to get a live ship? Has that ever happened? They just murder people to get family members to get a live ship quick and faster. I mean, those
Probably.
ways this could definitely be exploited. You know,
I wonder what level of trauma is acceptable before your ship goes fully insane.
right? Well, they do make that point.
Yeah.
They say, it's you don't want violence on your ship when you get quickened. You want a stable environment. You kind of have to baby them through it,
Yep.
and pretty much the opposite of everything Kyle did. Um, so,
Oh
so
yeah.
I guess maybe
Oh
murder
yeah.
would be the best idea for all that, because those memories of being murdered by maybe your son or your daughter or something is going into the live ship wouldn't be great. But it is an
Hmm.
odd ritual. I mean, it's cool world building again. I mean, it was um, just so interesting. That's how and the idea of memories going into the ship. Uh, there's a lot there.
Regarding the live ships in general, one thing I noticed off the bat from starting this trilogy is how magic just seems to be such a more prevalent focus in these southern areas compared to the six duchies. With the
Well, so
exception of
does
the
bathing.
skill, yes, but with the exception of the skill, but even that's more so a farseer, like a royalty line type thing. But like in the south, you have these live ships that are kind of like it's a normal thing. It's a little jarring when a random citizen would run into one, but it doesn't. It seems like it wouldn't be that surprising. And you have the Rain Wild traders who seem to have a magical element to them as well. Um, it's interesting how there's that disconnect between these southern states and the six duchies. Um, and then that's kind of even reinforced by the fact that people in Bingtown refer to the six duchies as barbaric. When we're reading Farseer and we kind of think that they're just, oh, this is how people are in the realm of the Elderlings, like this is normal. And then you kind of get that jarring refocus where you're like, oh, the six
I
duchies
love those
people are
digs.
barbaric. Yeah,
I love those digs at the Six Duchies.
yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah, they think they're better than them, and yeah, it's fantastic. And I like that kind of world building. Not to kind
I hear they don't even have windows.
of yeah, just the you know trash talking going on there is what I always love. Behind their backs, maybe their face, I don't know. But like even the Chalcedons, how do we pronounce
One
that?
of the two.
Yeah,
Chaldeans.
Chalcedines.
Chalcedonians. I know we obviously get them in the first trilogy too, but I feel like they're more prevalent in this one. And I just like this world. This is how they opened the world. Hobb opens the world up in this series. It's kind of
Definitely more world building.
showing all these in little bits and how they affect kind of Bingtown, which was it's I prefer this sometimes compared to maybe the Sanderson world building, which is cool, but sometimes it hurts my brain. Where this one kind of just eases me into the different styles and cultures of different places. So.
When we first met Wintro and he was making the stained glass, like, I was he using magic for that? Because that's how I immediately read it the first time.
I don't
And it
remember that
seems
scene.
like he doesn't think it is.
I took that he did it wasn't because he was so confident that it wasn't magic. But it could be right. I thought he was just very heavy in his faith, and he just figured that. But it did feel very magical. It did right off the bat. You're like, well, is there like some sort of magical quality with Sa? You know what I mean? Especially with
Yeah.
this.
Why did
I
he
mean,
think it was magic?
I think those monks have magic. They just call it like
Yeah.
prayer.
Well, even with the healing, they kind of allude to they're trained in the healing of
Yeah.
Sa, which seems a little more than
Yep.
I don't know, more than regular
And
healing.
mostly because it uses the meditative like trance and he goes out of his body while doing it. He has a literal out of body
Right, that's
experience
right.
while he's making the stained glass and like
Hmm. Sounds familiar now.
I
It's
don't
coming
know.
back to me.
It sure seems like there's some sort of mystical element involved that maybe the monks aren't telling him about because they don't want to spook him or make him think that he's more important than the other students than he already thinks he is. He's definitely a prodigy, and he takes a certain smug pride in that.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah,
Vesters do. Althea does too.
Teacher's pet.
Yeah.
like he of course because he's Wintro, he analyzes it and he knows that, and he like sets it
Yeah.
aside every day. But like,
And that makes him more cocky. He's like, I know my faults. That makes
yeah,
me good.
So like, I forgot to bring it up, but like a quote. I don't know it exactly, but when he's going to the ship with his priest buddy, the priest was like, just he's upset he has to travel back, and he kind of told Wintro, pay attention to maybe you'll feel differently, I guess, so to speak, after spending time with these people, because you really look down upon them. People who go on ships and sailors and stuff like that. And
yeah.
I feel like that, was a bit of foreshadowing, obviously, of what had to come in this book for him. But I took notice of that this time. I'm like, oh yeah, he's definitely going to have a change of feeling in regards to not only, as Kip will see, not only just sailors on the live ship, but pirates, and totally different point of view.
Yeah.
So, uh, speaking again, I knew this would happen. I knew on this podcast we were just going to run a round table of all these characters, which I'm fine with. So let's talk about Kenneth, the the pirate king in Wannabe. The first thing I'll bring up. Give me your thoughts. I'll start with Sean. Give me your thoughts on Kenneth and the very first scene we see him in. He goes to this island filled with what are called others, I guess. They have a bunch of cool trinkets on there. It's the
Yep.
only time it's brought up in this book, but it kind of this is our introduction to him, how lucky he says he is. And just give me your thoughts on Kenneth and then that scene in general, I guess.
Okay. I wish I remembered the more more of the details of that scene, but I remember uh, I remember realizing that he seems pretty ambitious right off the bat, and hungry for power, which are in the same vein. Um, I thought the others beach was interesting, and as well as the bracelet that he takes back. Um, but I think his ambition was the main thing that stood out to me on that first chapter. But like I said, I'm a little hazy in the details. What about you, Kip?
When he was introduced, I was like, oh, this is the character I'm going to hate. And then throughout the book, I was surprised that actually, no, he's not the worst.
I love Kenneth.
Like, there's several people I like a lot less than I like Kenneth,
Yeah, but it's funny
even though
because
he's got the worst thoughts, but not the
oh yeah.
worst actions.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so I'm just gonna say, I'm so glad we're doing this podcast and the series. We're gonna have a lot. We were gonna have a lot of discussion on what you just said, Kip. I don't want to say anything now. So when I first started thinking about these books, I was reading comments about them on Reddit and stuff, and his name came up a lot. I knew nothing about him. I just heard Kenneth, 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 and I totally get why. There's just something magnetic about him, disgustingly magnetic. It's just he definitely wants power. He definitely has big plans, and he treats everyone around him like garbage. They're kind of just tools to him, but not in a way that Kyle does. He's just very more manipulative, and but we have his inner thoughts, so we know that they are a means to an end, so to speak. So with what I did like in that first scene is that so he's on this island. There's a bunch of trinkets, and to everyone else, these others are kind of horrifying, and everyone won't even come close to him, and he just confidently walks up because he trusts in his luck, which is something is interesting to me. Any character with luck, and he breaks one of the trinkets. If you remember, he just smashes his foot down on it, and kind of pisses off the others, and with his foot. And they have a statement where they said, kind of butchering it, but the sea will take that ankle or something like that. They will get their ankle, which is obviously, if you've read this book, the first book is foreshadowing to him losing an appendage,
Wow,
right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I remember highlighting it where Kenneth was like, "What the heck's that supposed to mean?" But, it kind of brushes it off. But I always thought that was fun. So that island I think is kind of cool. I'll give vague spoilers. That it's probably not the last time we will see that island. But I just like the idea of all these trinkets that wash up that are supposed to stay there, and this weird. I can't even describe what these others are. They're kind of disgusting looking fish creatures. I don't know. Yeah.
Murlocs.
Um, and so, yeah, with Kenneth, would you describe him as the biggest anti-hero of the book, where he's lovable but hateable in Ship of Magic? You know.
Does he do anything? Oh, yeah. I
He's
mean,
an anti-hero. Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess the big like with him reading through the way he treats Etta, who is an incredibly interesting character. We'll get
Love
more of
Etta.
her definitely. But
Like
but
her.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's great. But the way he treats her, she has, she's obviously a prostitute. She's the only one that he will see going into these ports, but she always has to be clean. He's very specific about that, which I think is into a whole bigger picture that Hobb has. Again, with sex shaming, where all the male characters and Kyle and Kenneth, these women have to be clean for some reason, or else they're whores. Well, technically that is a whore,
Well, she, yeah,
but I just feel like he has and his first mate, what's his name? Sorker.
Sorkor.
Sorker.
Sorkor.
He's interesting with his stance on slavery, and Kenneth really could give two shits about that, but he's using that to his advantage to get a live ship, which is what he says his one of his big goals is to capture a live ship. Um,
Yep.
so I think he's in this book. He comes off like Kip says. You immediately like, oh, this guy's a scumbag. But then there are things that he says or the way he acts that either in leadership roles or in a weird way that kind of win you over to him. But I am excited to see if that fluctuates at all with Kip reading through the series.
Sorkor is not the smartest dude. but he does have this ambition, which I enjoy.
He's lovable.
It's not the biggest ambition. He's like, I want to be second mate. That's good for me.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I want to be mate, not captain.
Which is a really good point. So, all right, so they are pirates, and in all regards, as we think of pirates, are awful people, right? They're just scallywags. And then you have Kyle's crew, who
I I mean, personally, I'm more predisposed towards liking
well, we
pirates.
grew up on Pirates of the Caribbean. I see what you're saying. But
Yeah, but also like, there was this LGBT haven
oh,
on the high
nice.
seas.
There you go. I didn't know that. I but like with Kyle's crew, you would think like that's a more respectable crew, right? That's or people. So just compare Sorker to, and forgive me with the name, Kyle's one mate who kind of um, treats Wintrow like
Ooh.
crap. You know what I'm talking about? Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
Wow, I
I
can't
know who
remember
you're
his name at
talking
all.
about, and
so
he's on Wintrow's ASS like
yes,
paint.
exactly. So you compare the two of them, like you said, Sorker's kind of like a reasonably good dude. He wants to free slaves. He's just trying to do his best for his captain and kind of see the, he's kind of respectable to the people who he works with. Whereas this guy is terrible to Wintrow. He
Torg.
Torg, thank you. He is not helping Kyle in his goals. Like when Wintrow becomes a slave, he sees him, and instead of telling Kyle right away, he waits until Wintrow is made a slave and he has to buy him back. Like he's actively working against Kyle and the ship's purposes, in multiple ways. He doesn't care if Kyle fails or succeeds at all. If he fails, almost all the better. And he thinks he can do things better than Kyle, which is a different contrast to what you said with Sorker, which I thought was really interesting. He's kind of a more supportive person to Kenneth, even though Kenneth treats him terribly.
Yep.
To be quite honest with you,
Oh yeah.
and that's a pirate. We're supposed to think just all bad guys because pirates are bad guys in the story theoretically. So I thought that was really interesting dynamic between the two views of that.
I mean, pirates honestly have a more honest crew opinion of their captain than these commercial ships do, because the commercial ships, like, that ship is the captain's, and the banks will say it's the captain's, and pirate ship, all you have to do is mutiny, kill your
Yeah.
captain, and legally that ship's yours now. At least according to the legal system they follow.
Mhm.
So you always got to keep your crew on your side when you're a pirate. You don't have to do it under the Bingtown Trader system.
I think that's why Kenneth's like he's such a genius in my eyes because it's one thing to be manipulative and then at the end be like, haha, I manipulated you into doing exactly what I thought, or exactly what I wanted you to do, and now I win. But he manipulates all these people, and they love him for it because they don't even realize they're being manipulated, and they they love Kenneth. Etta and Sorkor
Yeah,
absolutely adore Kenneth. They would
Yep.
do anything for him, and he just cannot realize that they they care for him, and he just thinks that they have ulterior motives the whole time. Like he even debates killing Etta because he's like, oh, she's too crafty and intelligent, and she's definitely
hmm
got some dealings going on behind my back. I gotta get rid of her. But in reality, he should want to keep her around because she's
Yep.
super loyal and will do anything for him. And I think that is a good piece of writing. I think that it leads to some good humor, um, but also just a lot of good insight to Kenneth's character that only has room to expand.
There's absolutely this mirror being set up between the two crews and the two
Yes,
captains and the two ships.
good
Um,
writing. Hobb is
Good
good.
writing for sure. And I would say that the like Kenneth is an exceptional sociopath,
Hmm.
and Kyle is just a mediocre one.
Yeah,
that's nicely put. I wouldn't even say mediocre. It's just, but yeah, that's a good contrast. It's just the two of them. I really enjoyed.
Yep.
Uh, yeah,
Kyle's one thing that he was able to do was fool Kefria and to a certain extent Ronica.
hmm,
Like,
when they were backed into to a wall, backed up to a wall
yep.
anyway.
Well, the first when Kefria was getting married to him, they weren't backed up against a
Oh,
wall.
right, yeah, yeah.
Super. Like they were in debt, but not as badly.
But knowing Kefria, that wasn't that hard.
No, probably not. Probably not.
it just shows Kenneth's just that much smarter. And I
And
was just going
luckier.
to say that
And
goes into
luckier.
a ton of it. Like you said, normally, I mean, he's actively plotting against Edda and Storker in some ways because they're too smart or they're too cunning, and his luck saves him where he
Too
doesn't
nice to
act
him.
on it. And I wonder, the luck plays a part in this. Is it magical? Does he actually have luck? He must. Um, I'm gonna, I will bring this up real quick. I made a stupid joke on the thing, but I thought it was good. So the Mount Rushmore of luck, because luck in general, I figure okay. So Kenneth, Matt from Wheel of Time, right? Luck plays a big role.
Oh, we're putting him up against
Yeah,
Matt.
yeah.
Wow, his luck's got to be up
Okay.
there.
No, I'm just saying in general. Rank them how you will.
Okay.
These next two are going to get a little sillier. Kyle from what's that movie? The Disney Channel original movie, Luck of the Irish. He's very lucky if you remember that one.
Jeez.
He's an incredible basketball player somehow. And the song "Lucky" by Britney Spears. I thought these are the top four lucks in the.
You gotta add, you gotta add a, I cannot say it right now. You have to add Korab from Malazan,
Okay.
and then that'll round out the top
Okay.
five.
Good.
No, 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 no. You take out Britney Spears and you add Hoyd in there.
Oh, how dare you! That song
Mm.
brings me to tears. Anyway, sorry. That's yeah. So kind of, I think he's probably one of the characters that kind of just is live ships. I think when you come out of the series, he's definitely kind of a staple of this whole trilogy, and it really shows in this book. All right, another character. So my
Wait, can I continue on Kenneth
yeah,
real
yeah,
quick?
yeah. Please.
I mean, Kenneth like wants to be an emperor, and I'm rooting for him to do it.
Yes. And I think that was his. That leads exactly what I wanted to say. I think he had a clear character arc going for him in kind of all the machinations of his insecurity and his not being trusting of people and wanting the power. And I think he had a great character arc going for him, and I love his character arc though. This book and future books. Um, but then he loses his leg, and I was like, at first I was nervous. I was like, is this gonna ruin the momentum of his character arc? Is this gonna be another like Jamie Lannister? Spoilers. Um, and these other characters who lose a limb and they're just like, oh, now I'm gonna be humbled because uh, I realize that people who live under these rough circumstances, don't have it easy, or any of these plot lines that usually develop from losing a limb. So I was nervous about that. And we get a little bit of his character post losing a leg in this book. Um, but Kip, I was wondering how you felt about him losing his leg and just your overall thoughts on that.
It I had the same reservations as you. I was really nervous when that happened. I'm like, oh, this could go wrong. I just losing limbs. I'm always kind of with Craig on that. I always get nervous when they do something with that. But it definitely leads to the plot point is incredible. What it leads to with Wintrow, I think it sets up maybe the best, most intriguing relationship in the series going forward. I think at the end of this book, they kind of make a deal: spare Kyle's life if I can save your life. And everything from that point forward is pretty pivotal to the rest of the series. And I was totally
Yep.
sold on it just because of that decision, putting those two together, and what it means going forward. After, as you see into the later books.
I get nervous around topics like permanent disability when an author isn't able to handle it, because I feel like that can be a more frequent occurrence than an author that's actually able to respect and understand and do something well in this regard.
Exactly.
But I think Hobb is capable.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying like some authors kind of just use it too willy nilly and don't kind of respect.
I'm not saying necessarily that they use it too willy-nilly per se, but that they try to do something and aren't quite up to the task. Sure, there's also a subset of people who are like, I'm gonna have a character lose a leg because I think it's cool, and then just like not address it later on.
Hmm.
Like, or they turn it into some sort of trite parable about overcoming difficulties and whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
Having no like firsthand or secondhand even experience of it, and it just comes off really offensive, and that's totally possible.
Hmm.
But so far, hasn't happened in this book for me.
Last thing for me on Kenneth, I back at that island, the reason he goes there is because you get to ask these others one question. I don't know if you guys remember, and he just said all he said was, "Will my plans come true?" Or he said, "Will my wishes be fulfilled?" It was very vague, and Sorker was kind of baffled by it. And all they said was yes. And Sorker was like, "Well, you're going to tell us what that is?" And so later in the chapter, when you more read about it, it could be interpreted as many ways. Could it be that he wants to become a pirate king? Does he want to capture a live ship? Is that what he was talking about? Or is it something else later in the series when maybe you'll see he has bigger plans or more personal things that happened to him that maybe he wanted to face? I don't know, or didn't want to face. But I that stuck with me this time. I tend to lean it didn't mean those two things, but I think Rahab wants you to think that's what he was talking about. But I thought that was interesting. Like you said, he clearly has plans from the beginning. It definitely has to do with power, but I think the best part of Kenna is there's always something more going on with him. All right, this one is going to be. Let's talk about Amber. So a lot of people have, I think Combat Wombat is reading the book as we're going now. He has no idea what's going on with Amber or who she is. I know Kip has ideas.
I have a
He has a
theory,
theory.
and I'm sold on it already.
No comment. So, Sean, what was your thought on Amber go into this? I had mixed feelings, but how did you like her?
Um, I liked her. I don't remember a lot of her in Ship of Magic, to be honest. Um, I mean, I liked her relationship with Althea because I thought um, she was a good confidant for Althea and just someone that she can uh, and a good friend in general. And I think she needed that because she kind of she runs away from her family. Um, and I also like her how she shows compassion toward Paragon, despite his ruthlessness. So I thought that was admiring. Um, as far as who she is and her goals, I didn't have much of an idea at this time. That's all I'll say.
Yep, I'm with you. My favorite part was her relationship with Paragon in this book, which is, my rankings for characters going into this book was somewhere between Wintrow and Paragon. Those were the top two. I couldn't get enough of them. But yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea. I don't know. She was so mysterious to me. I didn't reading now. I definitely picked up on the clues immediately, and I was like, okay. And but definitely my first read through. I wasn't even sure by the end of the third book. I had to. There was just one specific line in the last book where I was like, okay, I'm now pretty sure it's who I think it is, but also I don't know. But Kip, you have thoughts. Let's hear crazy
Yeah,
thoughts.
I have a
Yeah.
theory. I think Amber is the fool,
Oh.
mostly because Amber talks about prophecy and knowing what's going to happen and being afraid to change it, and also being unable to change certain things no matter how hard she tries.
Hmm. She could be another someone similar to the Fool. Has that
Yep.
occurred to
And
you?
also her gift with wood. No, because she references the Six Duchies and something recently in the past and like being there and seeing some things.
Gotcha.
And so that leads me to believe same thing. Also, there's like the white seers are supposed to be incredibly rare,
Hmm. For sure.
and
White
so I think
Prophets.
that the white prophets are. I think the likelihood of having two in neighboring countries at the same time is highly unlikely.
That is
And
accurate.
also, uh, the other hint for her being a prophet in the first place is that her business is built up around seeing shapes in wood that no one else can.
Hmm.
Well, that's fair.
Good evidence.
Definitely a fair prediction. We'll see if it comes true. Good enough. Yeah, I mean that would play with. I guess if that was the case, it would play with gender a bit. Hob would be playing with gender a bit, right? That
The Fool has been playing with gender since the first
yeah,
trilogy.
it would definitely put
Yeah.
it into yeah, definitely has. Um, good. I like that prediction. We'll see if it comes true or not. But is there anything you guys wanted to touch on? I feel like I've been going through the topics. Is there anything we haven't touched on, or any character? Or because I got more, but
Uh, we haven't really talked about what happened during the first, like, I don't know, third of Ronica's storyline, or at least that's what it felt like, where
Hmm.
we just watched Efron kind of fade away.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
I love how you were like, sorry, real quick. I love how you were like, oh, there's no way Efron dies on the ship.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did have that theory.
Yeah.
I was like, look, I was preparing myself for the worst.
Uh-huh.
I was saying there's no way Efron dies on the ship, and there's no way Althea gets it either.
One for
And
two.
hey, I 50%.
I do. I will say with that point though, I did write. Ronica dealing with like a sick family member. I thought it was kind of touching where, she had this inner monologue where she thought, and I think a lot of people do, thought they'd have all this time with someone. Where she would have this time exploring with Ephraim or doing things that they didn't get to do the past 30 years because he's been so busy on the ship. And she kind of lamented how that was taken away in a full just with a
Yeah.
sickness real quick, and now she's thrust in a responsibility. And I think that's I mean, it's a big factor why she kind of pushed it off to Kefra or Kyle. It was actually kind of heartbreaking when she was talking about like that. You'll with anything in life, you always look to the future. Like, I can't wait to do this when I have more time. When life isn't so hectic and that. And I think Ephraim's pretty young when he passed. I think in 50s it was kind of alluded to.
Yeah, he wasn't super
So it's
young.
like all that's kind of shattered for her.
Wasn't super
um,
old.
and like you said, all that stuff she's dealing with, kind of getting the affairs in order. Like, she doesn't, her and Althea, they kind of, it hits them like a brick where they don't even have time to grieve. I mean, Althea has to stop herself
Yep.
multiple times where just saying, "My dad just died," on top of trying to rush to get him to the ship and all this and fighting with Kyle. She's like, "Yeah, my husband just died. My dad just died," and sucks we have to wrap. Yeah,
And some of the minor things that they mention that he misses, uh, like he spent all of his life during a certain time. He spent all of his time during a certain part of the year on the ship, and so he never got to see like their wedding tree flower or fruit or whatever,
Hmm.
some seasonal thing that he never got to see in his life. And then the one year that he's there, he's
yeah,
dying,
Hmm.
and also the
Bedridden.
tree itself is blighted,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Good stuff.
and so he never gets to see it even then.
Yeah, and again, and going into Veronica, I think the book did a cool job delving into a relationship with the Rain Wilds, which we didn't get too much into. Probably, we'll have more time to get into that in later pods, but that's a whole different area that she has to deal with. They're in debt to them because of giving
Hmm.
them Vivacia,
Yep.
so there's kind of like a blood oath where they have to give a daughter to them or pay them. But if they don't have the money,
Yeah.
a daughter has to.
And money's tight.
Yep, that's right. So that whole dynamic, which definitely plays a bigger part going into this. People, I think we should talk about Malta, or else people will probably yell at us. Talk about a
Yeah, I was
divisive
thinking that.
character. She going into this. So I will
Oh,
say this.
I hate her. I hate her.
Going into this, there was two characters I heard about. Kenneth, and the thing I heard about Malta was that she is the Jamie Lannister of this book. That you will abhor her in this book. She's the worst, and you will learn to appreciate her arc, and she'll become a favorite of yours. I refuse to believe that. I was like, there's no way after reading this book, there's nothing she can do that can redeem herself, and I just will not like her. I just know it. And guess what? I was wrong, and you will be too, Kip. But
Okay. I mean, she doesn't have to improve much to be better than Kefria, and definitely not much to be better than Kyle.
I, there is something about her where
Hmm.
it's. I hate to fault her too much because she is a young teenage or pre-teenage girl, 12, and
Teenager.
teenager.
Yeah,
So
preteen. Yeah.
So it's probably, it's probably par for the course for her, or for teenage girls. It's nothing that's out of the ordinary, but it's just so she's so abrasive and
Well,
spoiled.
it's nothing that's out of the ordinary for aristocratic
Yeah, right.
teenage
Thank you.
girls.
Yes, yes. Spoiled, pampered. Yes.
Yeah.
I sorry. Yeah, I mean, I found her definitely infuriating. Uh, Pardon me while I look at my phone because I have this screenshot, but um, like there was that one moment with a dream box where like she just does these mental gymnastics to conclude that Kerwin sent who is a Bingtown resident, not a Rain Wilds
Yeah.
person. She does these
Yeah.
mental gymnastics to conclude that he sent the dream box to her. This like Rain Wild magic device, and then so somehow comes to that conclusion, and then goes against all of her family's advice of opening it, and then does open it. And I was just like, I couldn't deal with you. And like if I was your father, I'd just be so frustrated. Um, and yeah, like she has so many instances of that where it's just like, what are you thinking? And I get it that she's very young, but Hobb does a good job of just really driving home um how she's just not stupid, but
No, not
uh
She's conniving in a way that Kyle wishes he was.
exactly. She is pretty conniving.
and it's one of the points that Kyle made a good point. Well, not a good point, but where he said he wishes that Malta was his heir apparent. And I can see that. I mean, I wouldn't say she's stupid at all. I actually think she, like you said, she's
Nope.
conniving. She,
I can't think of the right word.
I think she has many tools to succeed. She's just using it in all the wrong ways, and actually, but in ways a teenager probably, like you said, a spoiled teenager would. And it's just so infuriating, be someone that capable using it for, her own means.
She exploits the fact that her mother is afraid of her father.
Definitely,
Yeah,
she
which is
recognizes
also
that.
smart.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
who also,
And
yeah,
exploits it.
it's great though. It's great that she recognizes that, and she can literally outmaneuver Kefria, a grown woman, quite easily. But Ronica immediately recognizes this multiple times and tries to push back on it as much as she can, but still kind of leaves up to Kefria. Like the whole Dreambox thing. I mean, Ronica letting Kefria hide that, and not just sending it back immediately, and assuming that like buying. I remember Malta said she played the fool and saying, "I won't do it again." I'm just so crying and crocodile tears. I can't believe they bought.
Yeah, just like Wintro, some Malta's greatest weakness is her lack of experience in the larger world.
Hmm.
Which is to be expected, a kid.
Yeah,
And yeah, exactly. And he was locked up in a monastery. She's been locked up in the house. Among allowed only to talk with a few of their friends' children.
yeah.
And so she gets taken advantage of by adult women. And they take her money, they make her a dress that would fit a harlot, and they let her go to the harvest ball
Hmm.
unaccompanied on her own. And that's probably one of her biggest mistakes in the book. But luckily it doesn't end up coming to too much harm. But I was very scared something bad was going to happen to her there.
Yeah,
It's Hobb is good at that, at kind of leaving you on the edge of like, where is this going to go? How dark is
Yeah.
this going to get? And
Yeah.
things like that. And sometimes she tips a line. Sometimes she goes back and forth. Uh,
And I was like, first book, I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
okay, this book. Um, yeah, I mean she's a piece of work. I will say so. I can't remember the Rain Wilder's name. Who courts her. Um, but the age difference between them. So she's 12 or 13, and he's 19. Did I hear 18?
Something like that. Yeah, it's
Bit of,
not
not at
great.
all. I was just thinking. I'm like, that's I don't know if that's fantasy Bingtown okay, and back in that world, but I did find that a little. I think their point was right. I mean, she's not a woman, and if you go to these things dressed
She's
like you
not.
are,
No.
you're going to have unwanted advances or not unwanted maybe, but you don't know the repercussions of what you're doing. And she, as a spoiled child, thinks she's older than
And
she is.
and she had no idea that like establishing herself as a woman would open herself up to this Rainwild trade.
Yep.
Um, but I mean, I know where it goes, so it's it's a great decision for her character. Everything that happens afterwards. But this book is just this. you
Yeah.
know. A quick run through because we got to finish up. Just some things I wrote down. So for Amber, if you remember when she was talking to Althea, she thought she was looking for Althea for a second, but then she's actually looking for a nine-fingered slave boy, which I think we all know who that is now. But before, I was like, a nine-fingered slave boy?
Yeah.
Where's this going? Um, Obviously, Wintro, it seems like, is the person that she's searching for. Anything else? Yeah, I did. Did anyone have this thought? So I thought like Vivacia being with Kyle, or Kyle being the captain of Vivacia, it kind of reminded me. Again, abuse is a huge thing in this series, but like an abusive marriage where there's you cannot get out of. I mean, Vivacia literally cannot get out of this. She is just a ship. She is
Yeah.
stuck with this man. There's nothing she can do about that. I felt that parallel of kind of being stuck with someone who treats you horribly and you can't literally just cannot get out of the situation. Um, it was kind of heartbreaking for me and kind of shows you how it leads to her mental kind of decline, I guess, a little bit of abandonment and abuse, which I don't blame her. I was losing my mind.
Like you say marriage, but I think it's more an abusive parent.
Okay.
Hmm.
A relationship. Yeah, okay. A parent.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true because when you're
Like step parent.
yeah, just as a thought of something you cannot get out of. Like it reminded me of like in the '50s when divorce wasn't as accepted. Like these wives were
Yep.
forced to be with these men because it was frowned upon to leave. It's just you just didn't do it, whether religiously or anything. And
Well, not just frowned upon, but couldn't legally maintain their own financial
yes,
accounts,
Right.
right,
etc. And Vivacia probably could not legally maintain her own financial
She
accounts.
would turn to Paragon
Vivacia is not
probably.
allowed to own herself.
Yeah.
Vivacia is owned property.
It's either that or get beached.
Uh, like they say they don't have slavery in Bingtown, but what are the live ships?
Hmm. Which which actually is relevant in more ways than one. Um, on page 729 of the mass market paperback edition, which is what chapter was this? Dead air, dead air, dead air. 30, I think. Um, oh no, 31, 31. Wintro actually equates his relationship to Vivacia with slavery, which is relevant due to what we were just talking about, and also because there's slaves being kept on the Vivacia. Um, but yeah, he says, not so different, Wintro thought, from Vivacia and me. In their own way, they were like the slaves chained cheek by jowl below. They had no space to be separate from one another, not even in their thoughts and dreams. No friendship could survive such an enforced confinement, especially not when guilt was an invisible third sandwich between them. And there he's referencing the fact that he kind of ran away.
right.
Um, but yeah, so a lot of different parallels going on, um, which I thought was just really good writing. And one more note on slavery. Uh, I think that at least for me, this is one of the more realistic portrayals of slavery in, at least in fantasy literature that I've read. Um, there is the one part, I think when Wintro is in his process of running away, or he's captured, and one of the slavers uh, is talking about one of the one of the women that was taken as a slave,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and he's like, "Oh man." And I think she dies. She just drops dead. And he's like, "Oh man, I thought I could have gotten one more day at work, one more day's work out of her," which I thought was
Yeah.
brutal, just absolutely brutal.
Again, a time that Wintro performs magic.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that leads to it. But you're right, that was brutal, and I think it opened Wintro's eyes too. I just he totally again like I think it goes back to what that priest was ultimately that priest was saying like you need to live life a little bit to see how people live, and I think it totally opened Wintro's eyes from that point. I think that
Hmm.
was a big turning point for him that people literally just thought like that immediately. That's where their mind went to when losing a person. For him, it was you're losing a life, your normal person would think.
Yeah, this series definitely manages to put a window on slavery that few other series dare to.
Hmm.
like in a classic fantasy series.
Yeah.
Sure, they'll have some of the trappings. They'll say like, "Oh, this is bad. Here's a bad thing that happens." Blah blah blah. But it's not usually so focal to the role of the story.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And explored in various ways.
Oh yeah,
Um, all right. If you guys want to wrap up, I just have one last thing I want to talk about. Is there anything else you
sounds
guys
good.
wanted to get to?
My last input
Oh, I
is
I
sorry, all you could.
I meant to say this earlier, and agree with Yeti that I loved the friendship between Althea and Amber because Althea needs a girlfriend and a friend, period.
Hmm.
She is so incredibly lonely that it was very nice to have that connection be there.
I think I
Yeah, I
said
was gonna say I think it was Sean, but I'll take credit. It's fine.
Sorry, I was looking at Sean and I said Yeti.
that.
Um, yeah, that was good. We didn't get much of it, but that was I did like that too. Every time they interacted, for sure. Sean, anything? Last thoughts?
My last piece of input is just a quick quote from Wintro. He says, "I've no objection to worn or patched, but no man should willingly endure filth."
I love it.
I vibe with that.
Yeah, definitely. Winter either has incredible quotes in the series, or there's one in the next book that someone says to him that is, I think, one of the best quotes in the series. That speaks to his whole arc. Um, I just one I just want to talk about what I thought the theme of the book was for however long. So I think the theme kind of was characters are trying to control the direction of their life in this series. Althea believes she should be the captain. That's her life. She's the captain of Invasion. That's her future. Wintro, he's going to be a priest. That's his future. He has it all set up. Kefria, she just does not want to lead her mother's life. She doesn't want to be the wife of a big town trader. She had no, or being the head of accounts or trying to keep the family afloat. She didn't want that. She just wants an easy life where she does nothing. And I think this book and what Robin Hobb shows is that no one controls the path of their life. Life will push itself on you in different ways, in different directions, and it's on you to adjust as a person or a character to adjust to those changes and how you adjust to them. Will you crumple under them? Will you embrace it? And it's going to be interesting to see how the characters do that. But over and over again, I couldn't get over what all these characters thought their life was going to be. Even Vivacia, she would be the ship of a Vestrit. And when she livens up to see Kyle, and now she is under the control of a pirate, a smooth
Hmm.
talking one, albeit, and we'll see what they all do with it. But I over and over again, I thought, and I love that. I love when life pushes people, even in sad ways, and how they react to it. And so I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
I think it's absolutely a theme, and honestly, I have a lot to say on that theme, um, which we don't necessarily have time for, but I think that continues in a way into Madship. So I'll save it for then. Um, just leaving a little teaser for everyone so they can tune in for
I
Madship.
I think the person whose change and adaptability I'm most looking forward to is Wintrow's because he had something good at the start of his character arc. He had his life in the monastery, and he clearly has a level of understanding and introspection, uh, specifically introspection, that pretty much nobody else in the entire series has except maybe Amber. And I want him to keep some of that. I don't know if he's going to go back to a monastery ultimately, or if he's going to find some way to keep his faith and his worldview while living out in the wider world. But I do want him to keep some of what he learned in the monastery.
We'll see.
Yeah, time will tell. All right, so that's it for Ship of Magic. I want to thank Kyptan and Sean, or Black Diamond. You can find them on the Legendarium Discord. I want to thank Horizon Brave for setting this up, and Craig for letting us do this. And we'll see you next time with Mad Ship.
It was fun.
Yeah.